Hey everybody, welcome to a different kind of video for the channel. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the upcoming MMORPG titled Tarisland from the developers at Tencent. I haven't done one of these before, and so I'm hoping to get a lot of feedback from you guys based on the format of the video and any improvements you think could be made to the format, because I would be interested in doing something like this more in the future. Um, and so to get started, Terraceland immediately feels like a game very similar to World of Warcraft, both visually and in some of the ways that the world building is set up. Um, there's definitely a striking resemblance between certain races. And you'll notice that as you go throughout the video here. Although, speaking of races, what are the races called? I mean, it's very clear that there are humans, quote unquote. There's seemingly a gnome like Orin, one of the major characters you'll meet, who turns out to be an enemy, is in there and very prominent. However, I'm not sure what he's called. So I would like, I guess, from a world building perspective, if we could have some race names kind of delivered to us. I might have missed that in the quest text, but it would be nice if we got a little bit of that. And again, I think it'll flesh out the distinct aspects of the various races and also the zone flavors. Now, going through the character customization options, you'll immediately notice that the classes, while there are several to choose from, are gender locked. Okay, that is a deal breaker for many people, I understand. And beyond the gender locking, it seems like a lot of the character customization, based on my experience in the game, is kind of reserved for in-game unlocks and, of course, a cash shop. Now, obviously, in 2023, this is more the norm than it used to be, but there is still quite a bit of character customization in the character generator. I notice that each class does have a different subset of features to choose from, and there is some variety still there, particularly in the facial features. Although the hairstyles do look a little generic, and so do, quite frankly, the character faces. There is not a lot of variety if you do not look like a Western European demographic, right? So that was one of my immediate criticisms, is it really doesn't seem like, even in the skin tones, the spectrum of skin tones is really limiting and doesn't cover a wide gamut of representative skin tones. So, but beyond that, the character customization, the screen does provide you a little bit of information about the different roles the class plays. They show you some prestige armor. And what you immediately also notice from the character customization is that the localization of Terraceland throughout the game, and this comes through in other parts, and I'll go over that later, is severely, no, it's just blatant. It's obvious, and it's severely limiting to my personal enjoyment of the game, because it is, quite frankly, so poor that it is really hard to understand what point the quests are trying to convey, and some of the descriptions are just very poorly done. This goes all the way down to like the skill facts, for example, and you'll see me mouse over those throughout the video. What I've tried to do in the video is show you, of course, the character creation, some early gameplay, some cinematics. You'll see some dungeon footage in here. I managed to do some player versus player. I did some puzzling, which I really enjoyed. Look, beyond the character customization, when you get into the game, there is a structure here. There is something here. The developers are very intentful and purposeful in how they kind of drip the tutorialization in there, and I'll hand it to them. That is a sore spot for many MMOs that kind of just drop you in, right? And do not provide you with enough guidance on how to control your character or what everything on your screen means. And I think Terraceland does a very good job of that. When you get into the game, immediately you have a voice acted tutorial guide to tell you how to move, to tell you how to use each skill, and it slowly unlocks each skill. My most visible experience to compare this to would be how Guild Wars 2 opens its game, where your skill bar slowly unlocks. This will lead to a future criticism of mine, in that every single class is basically just a new mask. It's just a mask on this same system. You'll see later on, if as you watch the gameplay footage, I have each class kind of included here. uh, the skill bar and the positioning of the skills and their functionality is really cookie cutter across every single class. And with such a diversity of classes, you have 9 classes represented here, and they each skill essentially, barring some role differences, does the same thing. There is an AoE skill, there is a utility skill, there are damage skills, there is a combo finisher skill, there is a movement skill, there is a utility, like a combat utility skill that might silence a or heal yourself. There's a self heal skill in there. There's a slot for your healing potion. There's a slot for your combat elixir, for example. And so, what this does immediately reveal is that it does seem like Terrace is primarily designed for somebody playing on a mobile platform and not on PC. And so, again, it's 2023. There's a huge market there, and I can understand that. I will find that Tarisland really isn't on the extreme spectrum of like, hey, this is clearly not a PC game. The UI is so cumbersome, and yet it's not also obviously very um, welcoming to the only PC crowd, because there are certain elements that scream like tap this with your finger rather than click it with your mouse. And they even use the word tap in some of their directions. So again, not mapping it over one to one. But it really creates this identity crisis that comes through in other elements of the game. Whereas, like, is this a mobile game? Is it a PC game? Is it doing a great job of trying to reach both audiences? And so I really think, again, um, it's these types of criticisms that really prevent Terraceland currently in its current state from winning over, I think, either crowd, honestly, because I think some of the mobile players might find some of these systems or design elements a little cumbersome. So um, let's move on to the early gameplay. And so again, Terraceland does seem to have some sort of story, and it's not bad. It is, in many ways a little generic so far, but I think it has a lot to do with its delivery. It does kind of feel a little bit like Black Desert, in that you have this stone, this magical stone that seems to be sentient in some way. It has some powers. It gets revealed later on that, you know this is kind of, it feels like a borrowed power system. But in terms of how the story plays out, everybody's trying to figure out, why do you have this stone, what's special about you. um in the cutscenes, they're sequenced in such a way that they are trying to tell a story. The cutscenes and the cinematics are, unfortunately, because of localization, delivered very poorly. The quality of voice acting from to character is not consistent. Some of the character dialogue gets cut off right at the end. Some of it doesn't play at all. It's mute. It's silent. Um, and then to top that off, the mocap of the lip syncing seems it's either being dubbed or it's just off, and so it delivers a very janky experience when you are trying to keep up with the story. There's a story here of a tribe of, again, I'm not really sure what the race is, but the Ankash tribe of, essentially, these look like the Tauren from World of Warcraft. Um, have have had this stone area, this temple that they've revered for a long time. It's been taken over. It's been corrupted. The chieftain's son has supposedly been manipulated or gone over to the dark side, so to speak. And that's where you see the first story dungeon. And so, again, similar to Guild Wars 2, Terrace seems to have a dungeon system that mostly has a mechanic to deliver the story. And also, once you've completed the story, you unlock what the challenge modes of the dungeon, which you have a normal version, then an elite version, which, again, well designed system. While you're in the dungeons, there is also a marking system. I can mark the enemy. I can mark my friends, so that targeting them is easier. There's also an auto targeting system for healers, so that you can target the person with the lowest health, and so that may make healing definitely more efficient. The AI in combat is not very bad at all. There's phasing with the bosses. It's cinematic. It is fluid. It doesn't feel janky. I haven't seen one mess up yet. There are even boss guides to the dungeon. There are no dungeon maps, which sucks. I hope that they add that in eventually. But the dungeon system is pretty smooth. You can queue for dungeons. You can match make. They have for the story dungeons. You get NPC companions, so you don't have to wait around. And so you get to experience the dungeon at least for the first time, without having to stand there for a long time. And I really like that. The dungeons are very linear, which I don't mind because it seems like you're supposed to run them over and over and over again. You get guaranteed rewards. You have the chance at getting top or higher tier items. They have uncommon, rare, epic, and I'm sure they have tiers above that. But yeah, the dungeon is the dungeons are pretty cool. The story dungeon that I entered, the second one, I believe, the Library of Chaos, the Chaos Library. I forget exactly what it's called, but it had several puzzles in it, some logic puzzles, and uh, again, systems layered into other systems and that add to the variety of gameplay. And I really like that. The only thing I think that could hinder that experience is the story delivery. And so again, beyond the poor localization, the dungeon experience is pretty good. Um, I haven't yet gotten to play with other players during the closed beta here. It seems like the matchmaking is a little janky, and of course you run into the issue of maybe you don't have enough tanks, maybe you don't have enough healers, and so I have not yet gotten to play with um, the the other player base. Um, so coming out of the dungeon system, in the open world, your very first quest is essentially kill 10 wolves, right? You kill 10 wolves, you kill an alpha wolf. Um, and what I noticed immediately was that you are not getting experience for killing mobs. You do not even seemingly get experience from side quests. You only get experience, it seems, from main story quests. And I believe from um, activities that progress your battle pass, and which we'll talk about later. So the ways in which you can accrue experience are seemingly pretty limited, and you may find that some of the stuff you do does not progress your character at all, beyond maybe unlocking things or earning you reputation, which I guess for some of us might be enough. And so yeah, so you get thrown into what is essentially Mulgore from World of Warcraft. What I did notice here at the beginning of the game is that if you decide, and the game does let you run off the beaten path until you complete a certain story step, the world is completely empty. There are no mobs, it's not populated. And that was kind of jarringly weird, given that it does let you run around. There's no invisible wall that keeps you on the linear path. However, there are invisible walls at the edges of the zones, which again, that's okay because they do a good job of rendering out the distance. And so it does feel like you're in a world. However, it's not seamless. So as you're running around the first area, there's a lively voice acting happening in the settlement there. There are vistas, there are puzzles, there's exploration unlocks again akin to a game like Guild Wars 2. You can swim and you can go underwater. It's not just surface swimming. Doesn't seem like there's anything under the water yet. But you can, or you can actually turn into a camera cinematic mode and snap different shots of the landscape or your character, and change the time of day, change the weather system, which I thought was a really cool addition that adds, it just again another system that is going to reach an audience that enjoys the more cosmetic side of games. And so the world map is right now currently very small. I don't know if how much they plan on expanding on that, but I did notice that there are seemingly only two open world, or not open world zones, but two explorable zones and essentially one city zone. I do hope that they expand on that because they do. Their world map is pretty well done artistically speaking. You can place markers on there for reminders. You can teleport to the waypoint system. You have the unlocks that'll kind of reflect how much of the map you've quote unquote completed. And so there's a lot here, right? There's a game here, and that I can appreciate. And many of the systems that I'll describe in the video here, they aren't. They may feel somewhat incomplete, but they're there. They're designed purposefully, and they lack polish. And that's really, if I had to sum up most of my experience here, it's like, man, this game is almost there. It just needs polish, and yet it lacks a lot of identity. All these systems that I'm mentioning, um, they're present in other games. Uh, there's a they might have a different flavor, um, but they're essentially present in other games. And so Terrace isn't really doing anything all that unique. It's just presenting systems, a lot of different systems, all packaged together. There's something in here for everybody. There's puzzling, there's quests, there's alternate advancement, there's talent trees, there's some build craft, there's different roles to play. There's crafting, there's gathering. Obviously, there's dungeons. There seem to be raids. There's a lot here, and so they're appealing to everybody. And yet, in some of the delivery pieces, it's a little weak. Um, going back to my experience playing in the open world, the gear that you get from quests, it doesn't feel that meaty. If you open up the character sheet, there's a whole long list of stats, and it really doesn't feel like. Again, maybe I've spent enough time standing there with the target dummy, but it doesn't feel all that impactful because you can automatically equip um, your strongest item. It indicates it with an green arrow that it's stronger than what you currently have equipped, and so it doesn't really feel like I'm attached to the gear system. I don't know how integral that is to my gameplay experience because it just kind of happens. I click on a reward. It's better than what I have. I equip it and then I kind of move on. There's not really a lot of depth into the gear, um, but um, there is a lot of depth in your cosmetics. And so a lot of the reward systems in the game, specifically for the daily system, the battle pass system, the reputation system, are all seemingly designed to allow you to unlock more mounts, more cosmetic skins, and there's a fair variety of those that are unlockable in game through your activities that do not involve the cash shop. I even saw that a lot of the quote unquote outfits that are available for each class are achievement based, and I think that's really cool. And so, when you see and you read about Terrace Land on Google, and one of the first things you see is that they're stating that they're not pay to win. Um, while I would argue that currently, there are not a lot of ways, at least on the cash shop, for you to make your character quote unquote better than somebody else's faster. Um, this is closed beta, and we know how these games change once they release. Um, but again, looking at the battle pass, looking at the cash shop, looking at what's unlockable in game, there's a balance here. There's obviously a premium for the stuff that's sold in the shop, and we know that the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So you may not end up buying the sparkly pony from the shop because that's not your thing, but it may be for somebody. So again, opening of the game, tutorialization is good. Gameplay mechanics, while seemingly cookie cutter, they're fleshed out. There's advancement tree, there's talent trees. There are different roles and specializations that you can switch to. They even give you, once they introduce the alternate spec for your character to you or your class, they give you the opportunity to practice that in a enclosed setting, and they again voice acted directions to tell you to how to play your character. And you get into the open world. Geographically speaking, it's unique. um you can jump, and so that gives you access to kind of areas off the beaten path, and so it doesn't feel incredibly linear, even though there's invisible walls. Um, and there's a variety of ways for you to spend your time in game, progressing your character either through reputation, battle pass, or again the main story quest to earn your character experience. Leveling does seem fairly quick. I don't know how much of that's going to change in the full release of the game or by open beta. Um, but it does seem like you can level fairly quickly. I'm already level 21, I think, and I've only spent maybe 5 hours in the game. And so this main story quest really like pushes your level up, and so do the dungeons. We got to mention that earlier. Dungeons um, also push up your character level. So it seems like those activities are designed to get you your experience. And so, I mentioned kind of the early game there. The dungeon system is kind of, while you can run up to the dungeon in the open world, you can also just queue for it using a menu. And so, guys, I that is the end of the video. That is the end of my very first game review here, and I'm curious what you think. Tarisland is a game that does a lot. It offers a lot, but it's just okay in a lot of ways. And I hope that after the closed beta, where they are allowed to have missteps and mistakes and areas for improvement, the developers, apparently from what I read, are very responsive to feedback. They've made a lot of changes since the first closed beta, and I'm really interested to see what they iterate on next. They do need something. I think they need something to set themselves apart. It's hard to guess what that might be because they have so many content systems that are in the game already. I think that they need to pick something and really try to excel at it. Um, but I right now, if I had to give Terrace Land a rating on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being it's an amazing game, I really would kind of give it that middle of the road 3. Um, there's a lot of things in Terrace Land for you to do, but there are not a lot of things that make you go wow. And I think that there need to be some more of those heavy hitting features that make this game stand out amongst its competition, because it does have some very seasoned competition with developers and studios and games that have been out for almost 2 decades now. So I'm interested to see what you guys think. If you go ahead and leave some comments, if you had a chance to join the closed beta, let me know. And go ahead and join the Discord if you haven't yet. I posted a lot of pictures or screenshots from my experience in there. And I'll see you guys in the next review next time. Bye bye.